The year is 2001. Just 4 years ago, Jurassic Park's sequel, The Lost World, broke box office records and made Memorial Day history by raking in an unprecedented $92.6 million, which was the highest opening weekend at that point in time. Had it not been for Titanic, which went on to dethrone Jurassic Park, it would have been the highest grossing film of the year. The Americans rewarded the film with an Oscar nomination in Best Visual Effects, and the Dutch gave Spielberg the win for Best Director at the Rembrandt Awards. Critically, the film's reception was quite mixed, with some like myself loving it, while others simply did not. Regardless, Joe Johnston's Jurassic Park 3 would soon be released to the public. I've gone over the troubled production of this movie in the past and see no real need to give a history lesson on that again. So, without postponing the inevitable, here are my honest thoughts on JP3. After Jeff Goldblum became the second film in the series' main protagonist, Alan Grant's return was a no-brainer. While he wasn't in Crichton's sequel book, many audience members did indeed yearn for his return in the franchise in a pretty understandable way. This was our hero in the first movie. We saw his development through a simple child-loving arc that many believe to be quite important. Well, he successfully returned in Jurassic Park 3, but he may not be the same man you once knew. In this movie, Alan Grant hates dinosaurs. He wants absolutely nothing to do with the animals on either of the islands, and actually goes out of his way to state that they are genetically engineered theme park monsters. This is a far cry from his character in the first movie, who repeatedly corrected Lex for calling the dinosaurs monsters in the first place. If one remembers that film, he literally has a line of dialogue that states, "They're not monsters, Lex, they're just animals." And this dialogue comes after he's rested his head on the stomach of a triceratops and tells the audience that it's the most beautiful thing that he's ever seen. At the very end of the same movie, he even looks out at the pelicans flying across the ocean in amazement, the knowledge that these creatures are descendants of dinosaurs being something he's studied for years. The reason I bring this up is because Spielberg had initially wanted the plot of JP3 to focus on Alan actually living on one of the islands and studying the animals because he just couldn't keep himself away from them. Johnston's film deals with something very different. This shift in character isn't necessarily really a criticism I'm making, but it is something that I think should have been explained a bit better. Another thing that's changed from the first film is Grant's relationship with Ellie. Here, Dr. Sattler has moved on with State Department guy Mark Degler, and they've even had a couple of kids together. I'm not too sure how or why these two have stayed friends, and it's kind of questionable in my opinion, but still not a valid criticism. Just yet. No, the problems with this particular film actually become very apparent when they go to the island. We've already seen a pretty unconvincing parasailing incident kick the movie off with a couple of knuckleheads getting lost on Site B, and now we've got to deal with all of these other guys running around and screaming. It turns out that Grant's been kidnapped by Paint and Tile Plus owner Paul Kirby, his ex-wife Amanda, and 3 men for hire. All they want is to rescue their lost son. To say that this is contrived is an understatement, but what makes the film really stand out from its peers is the level of unbelievability that it tries to sell. As soon as we're on the island, literally this is the first thing that happens, Amanda starts yelling her boyfriend's name across the jungle with a megaphone. This is done for comedic effect, but unfortunately it just telegraphs how stupid this character is in relation with everyone else that was in the first couple of movies. Inevitably, a dinosaur responds, and it just so happens to gobble up a non-character before causing the plane to conveniently land in the branches of some nearby trees. When it starts to attack the rest of our group, we get a full body shot of the animatronic Spinosaurus that's being used in the film, which roars and forces everyone to move to the back of the plane. It of course tumbles out of the trees and crushes itself against the earth in a way that should have killed everyone inside, but nevertheless they're completely fine. They eventually escape from the animal and make their way to the series' badass Tyrannosaur, which is played off as a humorous encounter complete with Grant's famous "don't move" quote and the visual gag of everyone running. The Spinosaurus kills the Rex, and we're left with this large angry predator as a major threat for the humans that have stranded themselves here. If you're asking me personally, the two big problems JP3 has have nothing to do with Grant and Ellie's breakup or the death of the T-Rex at all. For me, it's the unnecessary constant humor that continuously falls flat and the extremely unbelievable situations that these characters find themselves in. Individual scenes like the time a raptor pretends to be a test tube reject by freezing behind some glass, which actually fools Amanda Kirby, and the scene in which the Spinosaurus breaks through a large dinosaur-proof fence just seconds before it's stopped by a rusty door with a few locks really throw up red flags. A major continuity error this time around has to do with the fact that Grant has a nightmare of a talking velociraptor on the plane, which is actually not one of the normal female raptors that he's seen before in JP1, but rather one of the new male raptors none of them had seen from this new film yet. The most unbelievable moment for me comes from the raptor trap scene. Not only does Amanda Kirby just so happen to break a branch off perfectly to throw herself from the tree, she just so happens to fall between a couple of branches before she hits the ground, and she just so happens to be out of reach from the raptors who leap up to bite at her face. It doesn't help that psychopath Billy is smiling and saying they actually set a trap after they pull her up. After all this happens, one of the raptors actually snaps Udesky's neck. Everything that's happening right here is a series of unconvincing conveniences that are like watching 3 or 4 raptor gymnastics scenes at once. There are other scenes that make little sense, like the part where they fix a video camera with a flashlight battery, and of course the humor never goes away, with jokes about T-Rex pee and tricycloplots being really odd. Interestingly, JP3 actually has a problem no other film in the series has as far as the human characters go. There is no active antagonist in this film to speak of whatsoever. The struggles the characters face are primarily through dinosaur chases that they have on the island, which makes this movie lacking in a major story component. Thankfully, all of the previous goofy stuff eventually leads to one of the greatest moments in the series, in which we enter a pteranodon birdcage complete with an eerie atmosphere and extremely fun action sequence. This set design is awesome, and it really gives you a sense of scope and offers a different landscape to that of the rest of the series, becoming a very memorable part of the saga. Sadly, it still has the really weird inclusion of a lucky bag, which they literally had in the movie before this one, so Billy's strap that leads to survival is honestly a rather cheap cop-out. After all of this, there's a really well shot Spinosaurus attack on a boat that suffers from the terrible editing choice of having its terror intercut with more forced humor of Ellie's kid watching Barney. This is a massive mistake that really hinders this scene's performance. How can we feel the peril and terror of our characters if they're continuously brushed aside just so we get a shot of the kid jumping up and down to the Purple Dinosaurs theme song? That completely undercuts the tension and purpose of this dinosaur attack. I've seen a fan cut of this film online that I highly recommend. It's called the Site B Cut, and you can find it on Vimeo. All of the scenes in which Charlie dances with Barney are edited out of this particular moment, and it shows you just how awesome this sequence could have been. In fact, once you see it without all of the Barney footage, it actually looks like this is how the scene was originally intended to be viewed. The music even lines up perfectly with no interruptions, and the Spinosaurus is genuinely scary while you're watching it rip the cage from the boat and snarl its savage roar in the rain. In my opinion, it looks like this scene had to be altered because it would have been too scary for kids or something, but this is Jurassic Park. That's kind of a part of the whole point. After all of this stuff happens, we have an oddly placed scene where Paul stops to talk about a truck driver wanting to punch his lights out before we fade away into the next walking sequence. It has no effect on anything that happens in the movie and is really just there to bridge the action of the Spinosaurus attack with the Velociraptor one. They give back the eggs and hear a helicopter coming their way, go out to the ocean and find out that Mark Degler has somehow called Bill Clinton and told him to send the Navy and Marines to save Alan Grant. Guess that State Department job works wonders. Oh, and just before we end, we see that not only has Billy survived, he's conveniently been found by the military beforehand and even graciously gives Alan back his hat. The issues with Jurassic Park 3 are deeply rooted in the absurdity in a lot of the film's scenes, subjectively, not objectively. I find it lacking in what drew me to the series in the first place, which was the constant struggle of man versus nature through an intriguing mathematical assessment of chaos and what all of that means as far as its relation to the real world goes. Genetic power has always been a metaphor for other big controversial topics. This movie doesn't have anything like that to offer. That doesn't mean I can criticize for that. Again, I said subjectively. But, subjectively, I was disappointed. I understand that a lot of people out there really have a good time with this film, and at points, I'll admit, so do I. In fact, I'll go as far as saying that there is a lot of fun to be had for any fan of action movies or thrillers here. But, I can't look over all of this other stuff that just doesn't add up. Structurally, the film is missing a climax. and the absence of an antagonist is more than likely the big reason why. As far as the story goes, this film doesn't honestly work. It eventually led to the series being put in a coma for 14 years before Jurassic World would get released way later in 2015. Think about this, in the time between the third and fourth film, there were 7 Fast and Furious movies made. Factoring in that there is no climax, there is a lack of an antagonist, the humor seldom works, and there is a constant unbelievability of many of its scenes, I personally would give Jurassic Park 3 a D. And look, I know for a fact that others feel very different to this, and I think everyone's opinion should be valued here. There are some who actually believe wholeheartedly that Jurassic Park 3 is the best film in the series, and while I disagree with that belief and have stated just why I disagree, I absolutely think that they should be allowed to voice their own assessments of it. My review won't be influenced by the personal feelings or opinions of others, but that doesn't mean that they don't matter. I completely understand why some have a lot of fun with this movie, and honestly, I think I might have fun with it in the future too. But it is on a technical and structural level the least good in the series. Next up, I'll be reviewing Jurassic World, and then we finally get to talk spoilers about Fallen Kingdom. Both of those videos are coming soon. Now, before I go, I want to thank my game wardens, like Saturn Sky, as well as all of my InGen executives, like Jacob Hagelstein. I'd also like to thank my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Macaco Chimbina, it means the world to me that you guys enjoy what I do so much, and I seriously am eternally grateful for every ounce of support that you guys show me. It honestly means the world. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching this video, and hope that you all enjoyed today's content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.